Virgo, I want to take a breath before we dive in today because something about the way this community keeps showing up genuinely moves me. Not in a rehearsed way, in the way that you notice when something real is happening and you don't want to rush past it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this. Now let's see what's waiting for you. There's a specific kind of silence that happens just before a conversation changes everything. You know it when it comes. The air shifts. Someone says something or you say something, and there's this half second where both of you realize the room is different now. The thing that was unsaid is no longer unsaid, and there's no going back to before that moment because you've both heard it, and hearing something real is irreversible. That half second is what I'm looking at with you right now. Something is about to be said, or something has very recently been said, and the entire shape of your situation is reorganizing itself around that fact. Stay with me because this is going to move through several layers, and I don't want to rush any of them. Let me start with what I notice first, which is a kind of held breath. You've been holding something in your chest for longer than you've admitted to yourself. Not a secret necessarily. It's not hidden so much as carefully managed, kept at a specific temperature. You've known it was there. You've circled it in your thoughts, the way you circle a candle flame with your hand, close enough to feel the heat, careful enough not to get burned. And the reason you've been circling rather than reaching is that you weren't sure what would happen if you named it out loud to someone else. In actual words, in actual air, where it becomes real, in a way that thinking about it alone never quite does. Something about a conversation, one specific conversation, or the possibility of one has started to break that open. Wait, I need to stay here a moment because something is clarifying as I look at this. This isn't only about the conversation itself. The conversation is the surface event. Underneath it, what's actually happening is that you are in the process of deciding, maybe have recently decided, maybe are right on the edge of deciding that you deserve to be known, not managed, not maintained, not carefully presented in the least disruptive version of yourself. Actually known, seen, heard, met. That is a bigger decision than it sounds for you. And I want to honor how big it is because, Virgo, you have spent a significant portion of your relational life being the one who understands other people, the one who translates, the one who adjusts. You read a room before you've finished walking into it. You know what someone needs before they've articulated it, and you have a nearly automatic reflex to provide it. That skill has made you indispensable in ways you barely track anymore because it's so embedded in how you move through the world. But here's the thing I keep coming back to, and it's landing with some weight, so I'm going to say it plainly. Being indispensable is not the same as being loved. Being needed is not the same as being wanted. And somewhere in your body, in the place underneath all the analysis, you know the difference. You've always known the difference. And I think this conversation, this one that is coming or that has already begun, is the first time in a while that the distinction has felt possible. Not just theoretically possible, actually, concretely, reachably possible. Let me look at what's specifically happening in the relational field here. There's another person in this reading that's not subtle. They're present in what I'm looking at, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. And what I'm getting about this person is complicated in a specific way that I want to name carefully because I think the complication is actually the most important part. This person sees something in you that most people miss. Not everything, I don't want to overstate it. They don't have some complete or perfect understanding of you, but there's a layer they've accessed that doesn't get accessed often. Something you didn't entirely plan on showing them. Something that slipped through in an unguarded moment, or maybe in a long, slow accumulation of unguarded moments. And now it's out there between you, and you can't unfeel the fact that they received it without flinching. That's rare for you. I think you know how rare it is. And I want to hold both of these things at once because they're both true. There's also something unresolved with this person, something that hasn't been said, or something that was said but not fully addressed, or some misalignment in what each of you is bringing or expecting or offering that's been sitting in the room with you every time you're together. This is where I want to slow down, because the instinct, the very Virgo instinct, is to analyze the unresolved thing until it's manageable. To think your way through every possible version of how the conversation might go, to prepare for each outcome, to arrive at the actual conversation having already had it 20 times in your head. I'm not going to tell you that's wrong. It's actually a form of care. It's how you protect yourself from being ambushed by your own feelings in real time. But something about this particular situation is asking for something different. The conversation that brings clarity, the one this reading is pointing toward, is not going to work if you arrive at it already, knowing what you're going to say. It needs to be a real conversation, the kind where you actually don't know what's going to come out of your own mouth until it does. The kind where you listen, genuinely listen, not strategically listen while formulating your next point. The kind where something can surprise you. I'm getting something specific about communication here, and I want to deliver it without making it feel like a prescription, because I'm not handing you a script. What I'm picking up is more like a texture that this conversation needs to have in order to do what it's capable of doing. It needs to start from something true rather than something safe. There's a version of this conversation you could have that would be polite and reasonable and careful and solve absolutely nothing, because it would be a conversation between two managed versions of yourselves. And there's another version, messier, less certain, starting from a more vulnerable place that could change the entire architecture of what's between you. The thing that's been said or is about to be said is closer to the second version. And something in you is terrified of that. Not because you don't want it, but because you do. Because wanting something real, something that could actually reach you, also means it could actually hurt you. And you are very, very good at not being hurt, which means you are also sometimes very, very good at not being reached. I keep coming back to this because the reading keeps returning to it. The clarity that's available right now is on the other side of a specific kind of exposure. Not performing vulnerability, not strategically opening up as a relational tactic. I mean, actually not knowing how this ends and going toward it anyway. Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer out loud, but sit with it. When was the last time you let someone see you not knowing? Not confused exactly, not helpless, but genuinely uncertain, mid-process, unfinished in a way you couldn't frame or explain or contextualize into something presentable. Because that's what this moment is asking you to offer. And I think you're closer to being able to do that than you've been in a long time. Let me talk about clarity itself for a moment, because the word is in this title, and I don't want to let it float past without unpacking it. Clarity doesn't always feel the way we think it's going to feel. We expect clarity to feel like relief, like finally having the answer, like the fog lifting, to reveal a clean and obvious path forward. And sometimes it does feel like that. But Sometimes clarity feels like standing in a room where the lights have just come on and you can see every piece of furniture, every corner, every object that's been in there all along. And some of what you see is beautiful and some of it isn't what you hoped for. And you have to be with all of it at once. What's coming for you isn't the relief kind of clarity, it's the lights coming on kind. You're going to understand something about this situation, about this person, about yourself in relation to them, about what you actually want and what has actually been happening with a precision that you haven't had access to before. And some of that understanding is going to be wonderful. Some of it is going to ask things of you. I'm not saying anything here to frighten you. I'm saying it because I think you can handle the full picture. I think you're actually more prepared for it than you believe you are. The preparation has been quiet and invisible. It's been happening in all those hours of circling, all that careful attention, all that reluctant hope you've been keeping at a managed temperature. That preparation was real. It counts. You are not walking into this unequipped. Something else is surfacing now, and it feels important to name, even though it's a little harder to articulate. There's a version of this situation where the clarity doesn't come from the other person saying the right thing or the conversation going the way you hope. There's a version where the clarity comes from you, from what you hear yourself say, from what you realize you mean mid-sentence before you've finished saying it. That version is actually the more powerful one, because here's what I've learned sitting with people over many years of doing this work. The conversations that change us most are rarely the ones where we finally get the answer we needed from someone else. They're the ones where we finally hear ourselves say something true that we couldn't have predicted we were going to say. And I feel like that's available to you, not in some abstract future soon, possibly already in motion. Something you say or something you hear yourself saying, and it surprises you, and you feel the truth of it in your body before your mind has caught up. That's the moment this reading is pointing toward. Don't talk yourself out of what you feel in that moment. That's the only thing I want to ask of you. Whatever lands in you with that particular quality of quiet certainty, the kind that isn't loud or dramatic, but that you just know, don't overwrite it with analysis. Let it stay. I want to say something about love before I close this, because it's present in what I'm looking at, and it would be dishonest to route around it. You love carefully, deliberately, with a great deal of internal due diligence that happens before much of it shows on the surface. And this is not a flaw. Please don't hear it as a flaw, but it has sometimes meant that by the time you let something show, the moment has already passed, or the other person has already moved, or the window has narrowed. I don't think the window has narrowed here. I think actually the window is open wider than it's been. And the reason it's open is partly because of something this other person has done or said or offered, but it's also, and this might be the more important part, because something in you has decided you're not going to let it close again without having walked through it. That's a quiet kind of courage. It doesn't look like bravery from the outside, but it is. The conversation that's coming or that has already started is the one where you stop managing the distance and let the distance actually close, where you trade the safety of being partially known for the terrifying and extraordinary possibility of being fully met. That's the massive clarity in this title. Not a thunderbolt from outside, a door from inside that you are about to open. Walk through it. I want to hear from you in the comments specifically whether you felt that part about being needed versus being wanted. That one comes up with Virgo so often, and I'm curious if it hit or if it's something you've already worked through. Tell me where you are with it. And if there's a conversation sitting on the edge of your life right now, one you've been almost having for a while, drop something in the comments. Even just the word yes. You don't have to explain it. I'll know what you mean.